I don't know about you, but it's been my personal experience that the very thing in my life that has been the hardest for me to handle are my emotions. So I want to dedicate this entire video to teaching you how to process your emotions. First, I'm going to talk about how our conditioning blocks us from actually feeling our emotions, and then the resistance that we might have to the process of letting go itself. And then I'm going to give you a glimpse of what I do when I actually work with clients, since most of what I do is this emotional processing. The wonderful thing about this is that we can think of this as spiritual purification. We have to process our emotions in order to let go of them, because it's really a return to wholeness. We're acknowledging, we're bringing our light of awareness to all of these fragmented parts of ourselves so that we can heal and become whole again. And this wholeness is really a loving act. It's one of the most loving things that we can do for ourselves. But before I get into the video, if at any point you find that this information is helpful, then please like, share, subscribe, or comment so that more people have access to this video. And lastly, if you feel that what I'm saying is resonating with you and you're interested in working with me, then please feel free to reach out to me at the email I've provided in the description box below. The monster under the bed. Before I get into the actual how-to of processing our emotions, I want to talk about my own experience with emotions, because I think that giving you some sort of context as to my history and maybe getting really vulnerable about that will somehow help you. So as a child, and even as an adult, I would have to say that I am extremely emotional. Now, by this, I mean that I feel things so intensely. And as a child, it was almost debilitating. I have so many memories of going into my room and literally freaking out and crying and sobbing because of something that was making me feel a certain way. And I remember my parents and even my brother, my whole family would just laugh because it was so dramatic. And that, of course, made me feel absolutely horrible because I felt so invalidated. I felt like it was abnormal for me to be feeling things that intensely. But there was nothing that I could do but express what it was that I was feeling as a young person. But the more that I went through life, the more people around me would tell me that it wasn't okay that I was this emotional. And these people were very well-intentioned. I don't think anyone was actually doing this to hurt me, but little did they know that what they were teaching me was that the best mode of action was to suppress what I was feeling. So I'll give you an example. When I was dancing professionally, I remember that the choreographer that I was dancing for would yell at me quite a bit because I was one of the youngest dancers and I would get something wrong or I would do something that he didn't like. And he'd yell at me in front of a whole group of 20-something people, other dancers. And it was so hard for me to experience that because there was so much shame and so much humiliation around feeling that I had done something wrong. And so I would cry because I didn't know what else to do. I was just feeling what I was feeling. And I distinctly remember this one instance where I was just standing there sort of taking the hit from the choreographer yelling at me. And this really sweet older dancer was facing this way while I was standing this way. And he just under his breath whispered to me, "Sweetie, don't let him get the best of you. Just don't cry. Whatever you do, don't cry. Don't show him that you care." And so I quickly, in that moment, I remember I just internalized everything and I suppressed everything that I was feeling and I just locked it up and I pushed it down. And I remember the tears just stopped. And it was such an incredible feeling because for the first time I felt like I could hide. I could hide from him. I could protect myself from what it was that I was experiencing. Now, little did I know that this was the worst thing that I could learn how to do. Because what happened shortly after that is that all of these emotions that I was feeling, that I was bottling up by suppressing them, became stored in my physical body. And what happened then was that I had colitis. I literally took all of this pain, all of this emotional abuse, and I put it and pushed it down into my stomach. And I was having diarrhea 6 times a day for 10 years. So this is not something that we should ever do or ever take lightly, because when we do not process our emotions, guess where they go? They get trapped and stored in the physical body, and then they manifest as disease, as discomfort, because that energy just gets trapped. Believe you me, it doesn't go anywhere, but stays stuck in your body. So I don't take this work lightly. It is so important that we learn how to process all of these trapped emotions that are being stored in our physical body. Because that's what happens when we don't process our emotions, when we don't allow the experience of what it is that we're feeling to fully come in and fully go through. Now, the reason why processing our emotions is so hard is because of fear. Because there's so much fear around feeling our emotions. They're scary. We don't want to actually have to face these monsters under our bed. But once you start to do this work of actually feeling your emotions fully, you realize it's no different than a child being afraid of a monster under their bed. The fear that you have about feeling slowly becomes desensitized, and you're actually able to build the muscle of experiencing your emotions fully. Finding your balls. Okay, I know this sounds funny, but I really do think that doing this work really requires that you have some balls. It's not fun work. It's not easy to dive into these feelings that are uncomfortable. So when I have clients come to me, it's never the faint of heart that's attracted to working with me, because these people that I attract into my life are people that are really at the end of their rope. They've tried other things, nothing's working, and they're fed up with not having some change in their life. And they're really just ready to let go. They're ready to let go of all of the stuff that they've been holding on to, for some of them, their whole life. And so they come to me with a lot of courage, because it really does require that we have some cojones to actually face these fears. And hopefully, what I provide as a coach is I give you this feeling of safety, that it's okay to do this with me, because I'm here. I'm here for you. You don't have to actually try to muster up the strength to feel this stuff by yourself. Now, obviously, if you have the feeling that you can do this on your own, do it. That is fantastic. I'm all for it. But if you don't feel like you can do it on your own, then please come to me or find somebody else that will do this with you. Because the most important thing is that you start doing this. And then once you do it enough, it's like the monster under the bed. You realize, oh, it's not a big deal. I can totally do this. And then it's so empowering, because you can actually navigate your life. You can actually go through life and know that you have yourself on your side. You lift yourself up because you know how to process your emotions. Nothing becomes a barrier in your life because you have this ability to process. You have the firsthand experience of knowing what it means to actually go through an entire emotional process and come out the other end okay. You know that it's not the big bad wolf that's going to kill you, because so many people are that afraid of experiencing their emotions. I've worked with people in their 80s who have never learned how to process their emotions because it was that debilitating. So please, please, please have enough courage to actually take that first step, whether it's on your own or with somebody, so that you can begin to liberate yourself. Understanding how emotions work. It's really important that we learn how our emotions work before we actually try to process them. What happens when we experience something in life that makes us feel a negative emotion is that we tend to not want to actually experience that emotion fully. I tend to use analogies that have to do with movement since I have a background in dance. So the analogy that I'm going to use is, we can think of an experience as movement, right? It's energy. Everything is energy, and energy is always moving. So as an experience comes in, that movement comes into us, it hits our physical body. And if we don't like the way that experience is making us feel, what we do is that we trap it. We hold on to it. We identify with it. We push it down. We repress it. We resist it. Whatever you do to resist that experience fully. And then that emotion gets trapped in our body. That energy gets stuck. And I've explained this before, and Michael Singer explains this beautifully because he says that when we take these impressions or these samskaras and we hold them in our body, what happens is it creates a loop, an energetic loop, because energy is never stagnant. So it just circles around and around itself. Now, because that energy is trapped within you, you've stored it now, you've tucked it away and you've put it on the shelf. So it's within you. It's almost like it's part of you now because that experience wasn't allowed to fully pass through. So now, whenever you have a similar experience that is associated with the experience that you've previously put on the shelf, you're going to feel that you've been triggered. And it's going to kick up all of those negative emotions again. And what people typically do, because they don't want to experience it the first time, is they just suppress it again. So it just gets bigger and bigger, and it becomes denser and denser. And as we push those feelings down more and more and more, we avoid anything in life that is going to hit those wounds. And then we're living in survival mode. Then what takes over is this feeling of, I need to deeply protect myself from life because I'm not okay inside. I have all these bombs that might go off and get triggered at any moment. So I am going to experience life in a very protected way. And you can imagine how bad that feels. You can imagine how going through life in this way is so unpleasant. It's so unfortunate when our life is one of protection, when our life is one of fear and survival. How to process your emotions. Now I want to get into the actual how-to. So there are a few really key things that we need to keep in mind when we're processing our emotions. And I like to think of every emotion as a dance that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And the reason why I like to look at it like this is because it allows you to realize that whatever negative emotion that you're processing, no matter how uncomfortable it may be, it will actually come to an end. It will have a conclusion. And sometimes it doesn't always feel like that because some emotions feel like they're just going to stay there forever. But I promise you that they don't. Every single emotion has this movement to it that comes to a completion if you allow yourself to be with it fully for however long it needs to be there. So when I'm processing with a client, what I really try to emphasize is, can you focus on this feeling in your body? And the reason why it's so important that we focus on the feeling is that our mind tends to want to come in and self-sabotage. It tries to stop this whole process of emotionally processing. Your mind, as a protective mechanism, wants to rip you out of the feeling and not allow you to actually experience it fully. Because it's afraid of what will happen if you actually experience your emotions fully. It's critical that we don't allow our mind to take over. So what I remind people of when I'm working with them is to stop thinking. You can allow thoughts to come up, but really not allow the thinking to actually take over. What needs to be at the forefront of this process is, what is it that you're feeling in your body? So I'll give you an example of this. Let's say I'm working with a client and she's having marital problems with her husband. And she's come to me, and what she's feeling is that she feels like she has no hope in the relationship anymore. She thinks that she might have to leave him because she's so incredibly miserable in the marriage. So I'll begin the process by asking them, okay, tell me what you're feeling. And they'll say, I'm feeling a lot of tightness in my chest. And then I'll say, okay, what does that feel like? And then they'll give me more detail as to what that feels like. Maybe it feels like a burning sensation, and maybe they're seeing red. And then I ask them, okay, what does that feel like? And then they say, oh, I feel like it's starting to move. It's moving up into my throat. And I'll say, good. Tell me what that feels like. It feels like there are these weird, prickly, almost needle-like sensations in my throat. And I'll ask them to feel that more fully, because there's a tendency to not want to feel these awful things, right? I mean, feeling prickly needles in your throat and a burning sensation in your chest is not a pleasant thing. But these experiences were unpleasant as they were coming in, so they're going to be unpleasant as they're going out. There's just no getting around this. This is the work. But the more you do this, I promise the easier it gets, the faster this process goes. But in the beginning, it can take quite some time. I typically allot an hour when I'm working with people, and sometimes it takes 2 hours. So as I continue this process with this person that I'm working with, this woman, let's say, I ask her, okay, let's see if you can fully feel that feeling. Just allow this emotion to have its way with you. See what it wants to do. And they'll just be with the feeling. And what's amazing about this work is that the emotion, because it's energy, because it's wanting to move, is constantly traveling to different places in the body. So it starts here and maybe it moves down, maybe it moves to the shoulders or the arms or the throat or the head. It's fascinating how it's different for everyone, but it always moves because as you begin to acknowledge these feelings, they actually move through you. And this is how we let them go. So as I continue to work with this woman, the next thing that will happen typically is she'll start to feel some resistance about what she's feeling. She'll start to not like what she's feeling. And at this point, whether you're doing this work on your own or with me or someone else, it's important to reassure them that it's perfectly normal, that this is perfectly okay, and that it's perfectly safe to continue to allow yourself to feel it even more fully, as counterintuitive as that may seem. And so what we're continually doing is acknowledging these feelings, looking at them, taking a real look at them by being with them fully. And that's really all that we're doing. And we're not allowing our mind to take over by getting into some sort of train of thought that's going to drag us out of this experience of feeling in the body. Okay, so as you're doing this process and things are traveling and moving and you're feeling sensations, a lot of what happens is that a memory will get kicked up. You'll associate this feeling with a particular experience that you had in the past. If you don't have that experience, sometimes it's really helpful to just ask yourself, when was the first time that I experienced this feeling? Because when we do that, we allow ourselves to tap into our intuition. And the key to this process is to not think about the memory, but to just allow the memory to bubble up to the surface. It's really about getting into this mode of being receptive and then just waiting for the answer to come. And then trusting that answer, trusting that whatever memory comes is what needed to get processed. And what you're going to do when that memory comes up is you're just going to trust your intuition by asking yourself questions. And again, you're staying in that mode of being receptive to whatever questions come up and whatever answers are received in that state. So if you ask yourself, when was the first time that I felt this emotion? And then all of a sudden you might see the memory. Trust that memory. Trust that that is the very memory that you need to deal with. And then when that memory comes up, you can ask yourself, why did this memory come up? And then receive that answer. So just keep asking questions and receiving answers. You will be amazed at what comes up when you do this process. Now, once the memory comes up and you receive these answers about why this specific memory is coming up, there are numerous ways that you can actually process your emotions at this point. One of the most beautiful ways that you can process is you can give yourself what it is that you needed in that experience that you didn't get. Maybe let's say you were a child when this happened to you and you had this negative experience and you didn't get something that you needed in that experience. What you can do is you can be the person that saves yourself in that experience. You can be the parent that, let's say, you didn't have, or the parent that was neglectful, or the parent that you just wanted to hold you and love you and tell you that you were okay. So you can give yourself whatever it is that you needed that you didn't get in that experience. And when we work at this level, we're removing the construct of time. And it's so powerful because you're actually going back to that core experience and you're healing that wound. You're actually allowing yourself to fully experience the emotion because you're receiving all of the things that you didn't get, which is why it's so powerful. Another thing that you can do when you have a memory come up is you can allow yourself to imagine that you're in an open field. And you take, let's say, the person that is creating this negative experience for you, and you can put them in the field with you. And then what you can do is you can allow yourself to give them all the space that they need to experience whatever it is that they were experiencing in the moment. And you can give yourself all the space that you need to experience that experience. What it does is it allows for you to experience this experience without feeling like you have to take it on, without feeling like you're trapped in a small closet-like or boxed-in space. And instead, you're allowing this experience to spread out far and wide. And you're giving it an infinite amount of space to be there. You're teaching yourself and you're learning how to allow experiences to come in and go out, because you've given yourself tons of space and you've given this other person tons of space. And so they become less of a threat and the emotions feel less threatening. One more thing that we can do that I find to be extremely powerful is to take the emotion in whatever form we see it in our body. Let's say, for example, you feel like you have a heaviness in your chest. Maybe it's grief, and it looks like this dark, heavy cloud. What you can do is you can take that emotion and you can acknowledge it and you can thank it. And you can say, thank you so much for being here, for giving me this experience of grief, let's say. And you can then take it and put it out in front of you using your mind's eye with your eyes closed. You put this dark, massive cloud out in front of you. And you realize that this experience gave you this incredible strength, or whatever it is that it gave you. But realize what it gave you and thank it as if it were this gift. And then, without the feeling or the need of trying to get rid of this, put this experience, put this dark, massive cloud into a balloon. And then allow this balloon to just float away, right? When you see a balloon and you let it go, it never comes back. So this is why I like to just see this image of this mass going into the balloon and watch it float away. Just let it go. But with the intention that you're not trying to get rid of it, just the opposite. You're thanking it for the gift that it gave you, but you're also acknowledging that it served its purpose and that you can let it free, that it can now go do whatever it needs to do, that it was something that was extremely important, but that you're ready now to let it go. And so that's another powerful way that we can process our emotions. But remember, this is not about trying to get rid of it, because that's getting back into resistance. What we're doing is we're thanking it. We're realizing that that experience actually made you so much stronger and more beautiful and who you are today. And so you can see that it served its purpose, but that purpose is now over and you're ready to let that go. So these are just a few really powerful tools that you can begin to work with. And I really hope that you practice this on your own or come to me if you feel like you're not ready to do that. I hope that this was helpful, and I hope that you start to actually work with processing your emotions. This work is so powerful. Until next time, I love you all so much. Remember to let go of trying to be anything other than the truth of what you are.